What if the most shocking announcement of the decade wasn't going to come from the palace, the tabloids, or even Meghan herself, but from Prince Harry? Imagine reading the headline that stops your heart, that makes you double-take at your screen, and for a moment, everything you thought you knew about royal life feels like a lie. I am divorcing Meghan Markle, it would say. Simple, direct, unthinkable. And yet, insiders claim that beneath the polished interviews, the picture-perfect appearances, and the endless social media posts, a silent storm has been brewing, one that could tear apart the fairy tale the world has been watching for years. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Let's rewind. Because to understand why Harry might even consider saying something like this, we need to look at the tension that has been quietly building. Meghan Markle, former actress, now media mogul, has been on a relentless path. Every appearance, every project, every partnership, it all signals ambition, determination, and a hunger for influence. She's no longer just the Duchess of Sussex. She is a brand, a lifestyle icon, a powerhouse woman whose name carries weight across Hollywood, London, and beyond. And while the world marvels at her success, sources suggest that her personal life, particularly her relationship with Harry, has not been able to keep pace. Think about it. For months, insiders have noticed subtle shifts in their dynamic. Public appearances, once filled with laughter and affection, now carry a trace of tension. There are reports of conversations ending abruptly, scheduled events with moments of visible disconnect, and small gestures that suggest distance rather than closeness. Some might call it normal strain. But when ambition collides with the expectations of royal tradition, the stakes are anything but normal. Harry, a man trying to reconcile his love for family with his desire for independence, finds himself in a delicate balancing act. One misstep, one misunderstanding, and the pressure could become unbearable. And it isn't just about appearances. Sources hint at the impact of Meghan's projects on their relationship. From her lifestyle website to her Netflix series, from high-profile interviews to brand collaborations, Meghan's schedule is described as packed, ambitious, and unapologetically forward-focused. Meanwhile, Harry has been attempting to rebuild bridges with his father, his family, and his duties, however limited they may be from a formal standpoint. Professional distance is creating personal distance, emotional distance, and when a couple starts drifting apart professionally, the heart often follows. Insiders paint a picture of Harry's growing frustration. On one hand, he wants to support Meghan and her ambitions. He admires her drive, her intelligence, her ability to captivate audiences worldwide. But on the other hand, there is a growing sense that the partnership they once shared is being tested. Meghan is all about promoting her brands right now, one source claims. Her mission is to be a female business powerhouse, and nothing is going to get in the way of that, even if it means spending increasing amounts of time away from her husband. The tension here is clear. Ambition, when not aligned, can create cracks in even the strongest foundations. And yet, Harry is not passive in all of this. Far from it. He has been navigating his own challenges, facing scrutiny from the press, and trying to carve out a life that balances family obligations with personal autonomy. But imagine the emotional weight of feeling sidelined, not by family, not by public expectations, but by the woman you chose to marry. A partner whose path, though inspiring, might not intersect with yours the way it once did. How long can admiration survive when combined with isolation, when shared dreams start to diverge? The stakes are not just personal. They are public. Every word, every action, every glance is analyzed under the microscope of global media. The world expects a romance that is as enduring as it is glamorous. And yet, even fairy tales have their breaking points. What happens when love is measured in headlines, when affection is filtered through cameras, and when partnership is scrutinized by millions? It becomes a pressure cooker, one in which even the most dedicated hearts can crack under heat. So here we are, facing the possibility of one of the most dramatic declarations in recent royal history. Harry reportedly considering divorce is more than just a personal matter. It is a collision of ambition, public expectation, personal fulfillment, and the complex psychology of a man who has spent much of his life in the shadow of the crown. It forces us to ask, What is marriage when every action is a public statement? What is love when ambition becomes a full-time occupation? And perhaps most importantly, what happens when two people who once seemed inseparable begin to chart different courses? The drama doesn't stop there. Sources say that tensions are compounded by the inner circle, friends, advisors, and family members who weigh in, whose whispers become rumors, whose speculation becomes fuel for tabloids. Every dinner conversation, every flight, every offhand remark is potentially magnified, analyzed, and interpreted. It is easy to see how even minor disagreements could escalate into significant fractures. Add to that the pressure of public expectation, and suddenly, what might have been a simple difference in priorities becomes a full-blown crisis. And yet, despite all this, the world still sees smiles. They see hand-holding. They see joint appearances. They see the curated image of a couple who is thriving, in love, and successful. But insiders claim this is only half the story. The other half, the private conversations, the late-night arguments, the quiet sighs over breakfast, is rarely seen. And it is here, in this hidden space, that the true tension lies. It is here that Harry allegedly made the kind of declaration that nobody expected, the kind of statement that could change everything. A whisper, a confession, a decision, perhaps even a warning. Now, here's where the story takes a turn that is almost too shocking to believe. For weeks, whispers circulated in elite circles. Harry is reconsidering everything. And the phrase that has sent shockwaves through insiders and the media alike is chillingly simple. I am divorcing Meghan Markle. Simple, direct, devastating. But is it true? Is it definitive? Or is it part of a larger negotiation, a strategic pause, a reflection of a man grappling with extraordinary circumstances? These questions hang in the air, unanswered, tantalizing, and impossible to ignore. And that is why this story matters now. Because it isn't just about a royal couple. It is about ambition versus intimacy, love versus public expectation, independence versus partnership. It is about the human struggle to find balance, even when every move is scrutinized by the entire world. It is about Harry and Meghan, yes, but it is also about all of us, all the relationships in which love, duty, and ambition collide in ways that test even the strongest bonds. So, as we dive deeper into this unfolding drama, ask yourself this. What would you do if your life, your marriage, and your personal happiness were on display for millions of people? How do you reconcile love with ambition, career with family, public expectation with private fulfillment? And more importantly, what comes next when the first crack in the fairy tale appears, and no one is prepared for the consequences? Because what comes next will change everything. The next chapter is not just about whispers or speculation. It is about actions, decisions, and revelations that could redefine how the world sees Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and the fragile balance between love and ambition. And as we explore each layer, each conversation, each tension point, you will see that what appears on the surface is only the beginning. Beneath the glitz, the glamour, and the headlines lies a story of complexity, emotion, and a silent struggle that no one could have predicted. And just when it seems that we have reached the edge of understanding, just when the public believes they know the full story, someone in Harry's inner circle leaks a detail that changes everything. A private conversation, a whispered decision, a choice that may very well alter the course of their lives forever. It is here, at this precise moment, that the drama accelerates, the tension skyrockets, and the question we all fear is posed. Are Harry and Meghan truly growing apart? Or is this just the calm before the storm that will shock the world? It all started quietly. So quietly, in fact, that no one noticed at first. A glance here, a pause there, a subtle shift in tone. For months, rumors had been circulating in whispers, but they were always dismissed, until suddenly, the murmurs grew louder, louder enough that even the most loyal observers could no longer ignore them. Imagine a storm gathering at sea, just beyond the horizon. At first, it seems distant. The waves are small. The sky is calm. But beneath the surface, currents shift, pressure builds, and then, without warning, the storm hits. That's exactly how the first signs of tension between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle became impossible to ignore. The first hint wasn't a scandal, a headline, or a dramatic confrontation. It was in the pauses, the way Harry and Meghan interacted in public. Observers noticed it during official events, when hand-holding seemed rehearsed rather than spontaneous, when smiles didn't reach the eyes, and when a gentle touch on the arm lingered just a second too long, or not at all. It's easy for the public to dismiss these details as coincidence, or as normal variations in human behavior. But insiders, those who move within royal circles and close social networks, say these were signs of deeper, more complicated tensions. People started noticing the cracks, one insider reportedly said. Not big fights, not arguments that anyone could overhear. It was smaller, quiet, subtle, but consistent. And consistency, in this context, is dangerous. It's a sign that something is not just a fleeting moment of stress, it's a pattern. The rumor mill, which had once been filled with admiration for the couple's love story, slowly began to fill with speculation. The questions started innocently enough. Is Harry unhappy? Is Meghan stressed? Are they just busy? But the questions always led back to the same possibility. Are they growing apart? It's important to remember the backdrop. Meghan, once an actress in a popular television series, had transitioned into the role of a duchess. And not just any duchess. She was the global face of a modern, progressive royal figure, a symbol of change, of new beginnings, of breaking barriers. Her every move was scrutinized, her wardrobe choices analyzed, her gestures interpreted. And when a woman operates under that kind of magnifying glass, it can be easy to lose the nuances of personal relationships in the glare of public attention. Harry, on the other hand, has lived his entire life in the shadow of royal expectation. He understands attention, but it's a weight he has always had to carry. And the combination of Meghan's rising public influence and Harry's desire for private stability created the first fissures. The next layer of the story lies in their schedules. Meghan's commitments, once manageable, had become overwhelming. From her lifestyle website to Netflix projects, from high-profile interviews to brand collaborations, her calendar left little room for quiet moments. Harry, meanwhile, was reportedly trying to re-establish connections with his father, Charles, and the rest of the royal family. Imagine trying to nurture a marriage while one partner is navigating a career in the public eye that demands constant innovation and attention, while the other is attempting to rebuild strained familial relationships and balance personal healing. The friction was inevitable. Some insiders described the tension as professional distance bleeding into personal distance. In other words, it wasn't just about being in separate rooms or attending different events. It was about living parallel lives. One source described it as watching two trains travel side by side on separate tracks, close enough to see the other, but never close enough to touch. And in relationships, especially high-pressure ones like Harry and Meghan's, proximity is everything. Without it, even love can start to feel distant, unbalanced, and strained. The turning point, according to sources, came during a period when Meghan's brand building took precedence over private family moments. Reports suggest that while Harry attempted to organize a small family gathering or reconnect with friends, Meghan was fully immersed in meetings, interviews, and content creation. The world applauded her efforts, of course, but Harry reportedly felt the absence keenly, not in a petty, jealous way, but in a way that made him question the balance of their shared life. It's the type of tension that doesn't explode immediately but grows quietly, persistently, and almost invisibly until it reaches a tipping point. And tipping points are never sudden. They are built from small, accumulated pressures. Insiders say that Harry's frustration wasn't with Meghan personally, but with the structure of their life together. He loved her deeply, but he struggled with the pace at which her career was consuming their time together. And Meghan, ambitious and focused, reportedly did not see her actions as harmful, only as necessary. This is the paradox of high-profile partnerships. Both partners can operate from genuine intentions, but without alignment, the collision is unavoidable. Meanwhile, the public remained largely unaware. Fans continued to celebrate their appearances. Meghan's fashion choices, Harry's charitable engagements, and their moments of shared humor captured by photographers. But those closest to the couple saw a different reality. Conversations in private circles began to hint at underlying stress. Friends, Advisors and extended family members noticed Harry's size, the way he sometimes retreated after social events, the moments when his eyes seemed to look for someone or something beyond the room. And when friends inquired, he reportedly offered vague assurances, smiling and nodding, but insiders say it was clear he was internally processing more than he let on. Then, the whispers began to reach the media, not as official headlines, but as speculation, as subtle reports in lifestyle magazines, in columns analyzing body language, in articles questioning the longevity of their marriage. At first, these were dismissed as tabloid exaggeration, but the accumulation of small hints, from repeated scheduling conflicts to fleeting public moments of distance, began to create a narrative that was difficult to ignore. The story that had once been about a fairy tale romance was quietly shifting into something more complicated, more human, and, according to insiders, potentially more precarious. What's fascinating about this period is that nothing overtly dramatic had occurred yet. There were no public confrontations, no scandalous leaks, no shocking revelations. Just subtle signs, patterns, and the quiet buildup of tension. And yet, the moment these signs converged, the narrative shifted entirely. It was no longer a question of happiness or success. It became a question of sustainability. Could a marriage survive under these conditions? Could two highly ambitious, public-facing individuals maintain intimacy when the demands of the world threatened to overshadow their private lives? It's also important to note the psychological dimension. Harry, having experienced life in the constant glare of media scrutiny, understands pressure in ways few people can. Meghan, while also public-facing, navigates a different kind of intensity, one tied to personal branding, career ambitions, and media influence. When two distinct types of pressure coexist in a marriage, alignment becomes challenging. And according to insiders, this misalignment became the first real catalyst for the rumors that would soon explode into public consciousness. By the time the rumors had gained traction, insiders suggest that Harry had begun to express concerns to trusted friends. These weren't dramatic confessions or emotional outbursts, but rather quiet conversations about priorities, balance, and the evolving nature of their relationship. Friends and advisors reportedly encouraged him to communicate openly with Meghan, to seek understanding before assumptions hardened. But in high-profile marriages, even private conversations are subject to interpretation, and even the most well-intentioned advice can feel like interference. And so, the stage was set. A seemingly perfect couple, adored by the public, living under extraordinary scrutiny and navigating divergent ambitions, had reached the first visible signs of strain. It's the moment where rumors begin, where speculation takes root, and where the public begins to sense that perhaps all is not as it seems. For Harry and Meghan, this period marked the intersection of personal desire, professional ambition, and the relentless expectations of a global audience. And as the whispers grew, so too did the tension, subtle, invisible, and inevitable. But what made this moment particularly compelling was how it contrasted with the public narrative. Outside the palace gates, fans celebrated their love story. Interviews painted a picture of unity, of support, of mutual admiration. Social media highlighted joint appearances and family moments. The world saw harmony, glamour, and success. Yet behind closed doors, insiders claimed a different reality, one of growing distance, quiet disagreements, and an underlying anxiety about the future. And this contrast, between appearance and reality, is precisely what makes the story so dramatic, so magnetic, and so impossible to ignore. And just when it seemed that the tension might remain private, subtle actions, missed calls, canceled plans, unexplained absences, began to leak into the gossip networks. Observers pieced together the timeline, noting the shifts, analyzing the patterns, and forming a narrative. Harry and Meghan were no longer moving in sync. Their partnership, while outwardly polished, was under strain. And as insiders whispered, the possibility emerged of a declaration that would shock the world. One that could redefine their marriage, their public image, and the very story the world thought it knew. Because the truth is, relationships, even those lived in the most extraordinary circumstances, can be fragile. And for Harry and Meghan, the rumors were only the beginning. Beneath the surface, decisions were being made, conversations were being had, and choices were being weighed that could forever alter the trajectory of their lives. And while the public remained captivated by appearances, the real story, intense, human, and unavoidable, was quietly, inexorably unfolding. Imagine waking up one morning to a world where everything you touch becomes news. Every tweet, every Instagram story, every public appearance is dissected and discussed across continents. Now imagine living in that world while simultaneously building an empire, a brand, and a public persona so powerful that it eclipses even the most carefully curated royal image. This is the world Meghan Markle has created, and for Prince Harry, it is both awe-inspiring and, some sources claim, quietly overwhelming. The hook isn't just her fame. It's the scale, the speed, and the ambition with which she has pursued her projects. In recent years, Meghan's career trajectory has shifted dramatically. Gone are the quiet moments in which she could exist as just another royal. Instead, she has positioned herself as a media powerhouse, a lifestyle authority, and a global influencer. Her Netflix projects alone have drawn attention and controversy. Her website content reaches millions, and every collaboration, every speaking engagement, every initiative she undertakes becomes a headline. For a couple once admired for shared appearances and mutual support, this shift has created an unspoken tension. Insiders say that Meghan's drive has intensified over the past year, reaching a level where even Harry, who has always been fiercely supportive, reportedly felt the strain. Sources describe a schedule packed with meetings, strategy sessions, media calls, and content creation that often overlaps with the couple's private time. One source told reporters, "She's fully immersed in building her brand, and she doesn't apologize for it. It's her mission, and nothing is going to get in the way, not even Harry." This is the key tension. Ambition without alignment can generate admiration, yes, but also distance, frustration, and emotional fatigue. Think about it from Harry's perspective. He once shared a life that was closely intertwined with Meghan. They made joint appearances, planned public initiatives together, and navigated the pressures of royal life as a team. But now, according to insiders, their calendars diverge in ways that make those shared moments rare. While Harry might be arranging a quiet family visit or trying to reconnect with his father, Meghan is negotiating with production teams, conceptualizing content for her next big project, or attending high-profile events. The difference in priorities, however well-intentioned, has become more visible, more tangible, and, ultimately, more difficult to ignore. What's fascinating is how public perception plays into this tension. The world admires Meghan's independence, applauds her work ethic, and praises her as a modern woman breaking barriers. Headlines celebrate her achievements, interviews frame her as inspirational, and social media amplifies every success. Yet, insiders suggest that the very qualities that inspire the world, drive, determination, ambition, are contributing to private friction. Harry reportedly admires her accomplishments, but finds himself struggling with the consequences. The lack of shared time, the absence of intimate conversations, the feeling that the woman he married is increasingly preoccupied with a world that exists beyond him. Sources describe moments where the contrast between public perception and private reality is stark. Imagine attending a gala, smiling for photographers, exchanging polite words with other royals and celebrities, all while carrying the weight of unspoken tension beneath the surface. Harry and Meghan reportedly navigate these moments with professionalism, grace, and composure. To the public eye, they appear united. But insiders claim that the carefully curated smiles mask a growing sense of isolation, especially for Harry. The world sees Meghan's success. He feels its consequences on their relationship. And it's not just about appearances. Meghan's expanding empire has tangible effects on daily life. Her commitments reportedly leave little room for spontaneous interactions, for quiet meals, for shared routines that once cemented their bond. Insiders suggest that Harry has expressed frustration in private conversations, noting that while he supports her fully, the pace and scope of her projects make him feel disconnected. He wants to be involved, one source reportedly said, but it's hard when Meghan is constantly immersed in work that demands her full attention. This is where admiration meets tension. Loving someone for their ambition, but grappling with the emotional cost of that ambition. At the same time, Meghan reportedly thrives in this high-energy environment. The projects, the collaborations, the brand expansions, they are not just professional pursuits. They are deeply personal. For her, building a media empire is about influence, impact, and independence. Sources suggest that she views the attention and pressure not as obstacles, but as validation of her purpose. And in a sense, this makes her more formidable, more driven, and more ambitious than ever before. But ambition, as history has shown, can be isolating, even in the closest relationships. The contrast between Meghan's growing independence and Harry's desire for connection is further amplified by the media spotlight. Every choice she makes is magnified, analyzed, and interpreted by millions. Every career decision carries implications not only for her public persona, but also for the couple's private life. And while Meghan reportedly embraces this scrutiny as part of her mission, Harry experiences it differently. He has spent years navigating press attention, sometimes in painful ways, and now faces a new challenge: balancing support for Meghan's goals with his own need for intimacy, recognition, and emotional connection. The tension is also exacerbated by the nature of Meghan's projects. Sources claim that while Harry engages in charitable initiatives, low-profile appearances, and attempts to reconnect with family, Meghan's work is highly visible, fast-paced, and strategically demanding. It requires her to be on top of every detail, from content creation to marketing strategy to public messaging. And while this approach garners admiration from the public and credibility in the professional sphere, it reportedly leaves little time for personal reconnection. The result is a widening emotional gap, one that insiders say is both subtle and undeniable. Some observers suggest that this gap is the central issue: the balance between personal connection and professional ambition. Harry reportedly feels that their priorities, once aligned, are now diverging. Meghan reportedly feels that she is living her purpose and does not want to compromise her goals. This is the paradox of high-profile relationships. Both partners may act from genuine intention, yet the consequences of those intentions can create distance, misunderstanding, and tension. And in the case of Harry and Meghan, the stakes are extraordinarily high, not only for their personal lives, but also for the global audience invested in their story. And then there's the timing. According to insiders, the period during which Meghan expanded her empire coincided with Harry's attempts to repair relationships with family members, including his father and extended royal relatives. The overlap of personal reconciliation and professional ambition created a situation where neither partner could fully prioritize the other. One source described it as two strong currents moving in different directions, pulling them apart despite their best efforts. It's an analogy that captures the essence of the tension: two people deeply committed to different paths, each believing in their course, yet struggling to maintain the connection that once defined their partnership. Meanwhile, the public narrative remained overwhelmingly positive. Headlines praised Meghan for her innovation, creativity, and empowerment. Social media amplified her successes. Interviews framed her as an inspirational figure, and supporters cheered her every move. Yet insiders claimed that the very qualities celebrated by the public, the focus, ambition, and relentless drive, were precisely what contributed to a growing strain in her marriage. Harry, sources say, found it increasingly difficult to reconcile admiration for his wife's achievements with the emotional impact of her absence in their shared life. Even the smallest details, insiders suggest, became emotionally charged. Canceled plans, missed calls, brief messages, and postponed events. All of these accumulated, slowly, imperceptibly, into what some described as a growing divide. And while Meghan reportedly viewed these moments as unavoidable consequences of her busy schedule, Harry reportedly internalized them as signs of distance, signs that the relationship was shifting in ways neither had fully anticipated. And so the stage was set for a critical question: how does a marriage survive when one partner's ambitions outpace the shared rhythms of daily life? How do you maintain intimacy, connection, and emotional support when professional pursuits dominate time, energy, and attention? And most importantly, what happens when the distance grows enough that even public appearances can't mask it? Because in the world of Harry and Meghan, This is exactly what began to happen. The cracks that appeared in private slowly began to reflect in public moments. Observers started noticing gestures that seemed rehearsed rather than spontaneous, conversations that seemed clipped rather than warm, and smiles that, while present, didn't quite reach the eyes. To the casual observer, these might have been nothing. To insiders, they were unmistakable signs of emotional distance, a warning signal that even the most celebrated partnerships can face profound challenges. And just when it seemed that the world might remain unaware, a subtle shift occurred. Whispers began to circulate among friends and advisors, hinting that Harry had started questioning the trajectory of their relationship. Conversations that once centered on family, travel, or charitable initiatives began to include questions about priorities, shared time, and the emotional impact of professional demands. And while nothing had yet been publicly confirmed, insiders suggested that the tension was reaching a point where it could no longer remain private. But just as the rumors began to crystallize into a narrative, something unexpected happened, something that would escalate the tension and bring the first hints of a dramatic revelation. A conversation, a decision, a small but pivotal moment in Harry's inner circle reportedly set the stage for what would become the next chapter of their story. And this moment, sources claim, contained the seeds of a shock that could change everything. What does it mean to be a prince in the 21st century? To be born into royalty is to live a life of privilege, expectation, and constant scrutiny. Every move you make is observed, every word weighed, every gesture analyzed. But what happens when the crown, the title, and the public gaze become burdens rather than blessings? For Prince Harry, the question of identity has always been central. Not just as a member of the royal family, but as a husband, a father, and a man trying to carve out his own place in a world that constantly compares him to his father, his brother, and the legacy of the monarchy itself. This search for identity has been complicated by his marriage to Meghan Markle. On one hand, Meghan represented freedom, modernity, and an escape from the rigid confines of royal expectation. She was a partner who could challenge conventions, push boundaries, and redefine what life outside the strictest traditions could look like. On the other hand, her ambition and public persona introduced new complexities. Suddenly, Harry was no longer just navigating his own place in the world. He was balancing the weight of a global relationship, the expectations of a public audience, and the private struggles of a man trying to define who he is outside the shadow of the crown. The hook here is simple. Harry has spent decades trying to reconcile two conflicting realities: the expectations of the institution he was born into, and the desire for autonomy that he has nurtured since youth. He witnessed his mother's life, her sacrifices, and ultimately her tragic end, which instilled in him a deep awareness of the personal cost of public life. Every decision he made, every public statement, every move toward independence, carries echoes of that early trauma. And while Meghan represents an opportunity to redefine his life on his own terms, insiders suggest that the distance created by her ambitious pursuits has forced Harry to confront questions he may have avoided for years. Sources claim that Harry's internal struggle has intensified as Meghan's empire expanded. On one hand, he supports her, admires her, and believes in her vision. On the other hand, the emotional consequences of her career trajectory are reportedly significant. He has reportedly expressed feelings of isolation, frustration, and longing for the closeness they once shared. Friends suggest that he spends hours reflecting on the balance of power, attention, and affection within their relationship, weighing the costs of ambition against the desire for intimacy and partnership. It's the kind of reflection that can keep someone awake at night, haunted by questions that have no simple answers. And it's not just personal reflection. Harry has actively sought to carve out a new identity separate from Meghan's growing influence and from the constraints of royal life. Insiders describe initiatives he has taken to reconnect with family members, to engage in charitable work, and to establish personal projects that align with his own values and passions. This dual focus, rebuilding familial relationships while maintaining emotional connection with Meghan, has reportedly created moments of tension. Friends suggest that Harry often feels caught between two worlds, the one he inherited at birth and the one he is trying to build for himself and his family. The search for identity is further complicated by media scrutiny. Every move he makes, whether a charitable initiative, a statement, or a casual appearance, is magnified, interpreted, and often misrepresented. Insiders suggest that Harry feels both admiration and resentment for Meghan's capacity to thrive under similar conditions, seeing how the public applauds her achievements while quietly assessing the impact on their private life. This comparison, however unintended, reportedly adds a subtle pressure that fuels his introspection. One source describes Harry's inner conflict as a tug-of-war between love and self-definition. He wants to support Meghan fully. He wants to celebrate her success. But he also needs to maintain his own sense of purpose and agency, a purpose that sometimes conflicts with her priorities. Imagine trying to build a partnership when both individuals are operating at the top of their fields, when every action is public, and when the pressure to perform, achieve, and maintain appearances is relentless. According to insiders, this dynamic has contributed to what many describe as the first emotional fractures in their marriage. Adding to the complexity is Harry's evolving role within the royal family. He has spent years stepping away from the traditional obligations expected of him, trying to establish a life that balances personal freedom with duty. But even in these efforts, he cannot escape the weight of expectation. Every action is interpreted, every decision scrutinized, and every choice measured against the history of his family. Friends suggest that this duality, striving for autonomy while honoring legacy, has led to moments of deep internal conflict, particularly when juxtaposed with Meghan's independence and outward-facing success. And then there is the psychological dimension. Harry's awareness of the public gaze, his concern for family reputation, and his understanding of media influence all inform his decisions in ways that outsiders may never fully grasp. Insiders suggest that he often reflects on the consequences of personal actions, the impact of private conversations, and the potential fallout of even the smallest gestures. This constant analysis can be exhausting, but it also reflects the deep seriousness with which he approaches his role as a husband, a father, and a public figure. At the same time, Harry reportedly feels moments of profound admiration for Meghan. Her confidence, her strategic thinking, and her relentless drive are qualities he finds inspiring. Yet, admiration alone cannot replace emotional intimacy, shared experiences, or the comfort of simple companionship. Friends claim that Harry increasingly feels a sense of longing for connection, a desire for moments that feel unstructured, spontaneous, and shared. Moments that have become rare in the whirlwind of Meghan's career and the demands of public life. Sources also indicate that Harry has quietly sought counsel from trusted advisors. He reportedly discusses strategies for balancing personal fulfillment with relational harmony, seeking ways to maintain closeness with Meghan while honoring his own needs. These conversations are described as thoughtful, deliberate, and emotionally charged. Friends suggest that he is acutely aware of the stakes, understanding that every decision carries consequences not only for him and Meghan, but for the perception of the couple in the eyes of the world. The search for identity, however, is not linear. According to insiders, Harry experiences moments of clarity followed by periods of doubt, confidence followed by uncertainty. One day, he may feel empowered by a personal achievement or by progress in reconnecting with family. The next, he may feel the weight of distance from Meghan or the intensity of public scrutiny. This ebb and flow is described as both exhausting and illuminating, forcing him to confront truths about himself, his marriage, and the life he wants to build. And yet, amidst all of this, there is hope. Sources suggest that Harry remains deeply committed to Meghan, invested in their marriage, and willing to navigate the challenges posed by ambition, public scrutiny, and emotional distance. The tension, insiders say, is not about lack of love. It is about alignment, timing, and the profound challenges of balancing individual growth with relational harmony. It is about finding a path that allows both partners to thrive without sacrificing the connection that brought them together in the first place. But the struggle is real, and the consequences are palpable. Friends claim that Harry has begun to question whether admiration and love are enough to sustain a relationship under these conditions. He reportedly grapples with the paradox of wanting to support Meghan while also seeking closeness, emotional security, and a shared sense of purpose. It is a challenge that is intensely personal, yet amplified by the global audience watching every move. And just when it seemed that Harry's search for identity would remain an internal journey, an external factor reportedly intervened. A conversation, a gesture, or a moment of realization that forced him to confront the reality of the growing distance in his marriage. Insiders suggest that this moment was pivotal, setting the stage for decisions, confessions, and revelations that would reverberate far beyond the private sphere. Because the truth is, identity and relationships are intertwined. When one shifts dramatically, the other is inevitably affected. And for Harry, the pursuit of selfhood, autonomy, and personal fulfillment has begun to intersect with the realities of his marriage in ways that may soon demand answers. Answers that, according to insiders, could change everything. Imagine sharing a life with someone you love, but feeling like you're living on two completely different timelines. That is the paradox at the heart of Harry and Meghan's marriage, according to insiders who have followed their journey closely. On paper, it appears perfect, a prince and a duchess, celebrated globally, walking side by side into a life full of privilege, love, and opportunity. But in private, sources suggest, the reality is far more complex. Two lives intersecting, sometimes overlapping, sometimes pulling apart, in a delicate balance that requires constant negotiation. The hook here is unsettling. Outward appearances can be deceiving. While the world sees a partnership filled with affection, laughter, and shared success, insiders claim that Harry and Meghan are increasingly living parallel lives, their paths aligned only in moments carefully orchestrated for public consumption. Observers note that their marriage has become a study in contrasts. Harry, seeking connection, reconciliation, and stability. Meghan, forging forward with ambition, influence, and personal projects. The difference is subtle yet profound, creating a dynamic where love and distance coexist in a delicate, often tense equilibrium. Sources describe early signs of divergence in the couple's routines. Simple things that most married couples take for granted. Breakfast together, quiet conversations, spontaneous outings, reportedly became rare. Instead, schedules filled with back-to-back engagements, media calls, and strategic planning sessions created a kind of temporal separation. Harry might wake up hoping for a few quiet hours with Meghan, only to find that she is already in a meeting, speaking to her team, or preparing for a content rollout. The gap is not dramatic, but it is consistent, accumulating over weeks and months, slowly eroding the intimacy they once shared. It's important to understand the emotional ramifications of this dynamic. Insiders suggest that Harry often feels a sense of longing. Longing not for fame, media attention, or public acclaim, but for simple companionship. Friends reportedly observe that he misses the moments when life was quieter, when love was expressed not through strategic projects or public appearances, but through gestures, shared experiences, and personal connection. Meghan, meanwhile, is reportedly operating in a state of focused determination, channeling her energy into building an empire that demands attention, creativity, and constant oversight. The result is a juxtaposition, admiration from Harry mingled with frustration, and ambition from Meghan mingled with subtle distance. This duality is further complicated by the public eye. Every action is scrutinized, every appearance analyzed, every word interpreted. Insiders note that this creates a feedback loop. Meghan's drive receives acclaim, reinforcing her focus and ambition. Harry's longing for intimacy and shared experiences becomes magnified by public attention, amplifying feelings of isolation. It is a dynamic that is emotionally exhausting, creating tension even in the absence of overt conflict. The contrast between their two lives becomes even more apparent in private moments. Sources suggest that when they are alone, conversation topics often revolve around logistics, schedules, or strategic planning rather than personal feelings. Simple questions like, "How was your day?" or "Do you want to take a walk together?" reportedly become brief exchanges or delayed responses. The rhythm of married life, once intuitive and shared, has, according to insiders, become transactional and structured. The emotional intimacy that binds couples begins to fray when practical matters dominate, even in the presence of love. And yet, it's not all tension. Insiders emphasize that both Harry and Meghan are deeply committed to each other, invested in their family, and aware of the unique pressures they face. They reportedly make intentional efforts to connect, to spend quality time together, and to support one another publicly and privately. The problem, sources claim, is not the absence of love. It is the challenge of alignment in two lives that are accelerating at different speeds. Imagine trying to walk in tandem while each person is on a moving walkway going at a slightly different pace. Even the most careful steps can feel mismatched. Friends and advisors reportedly notice that the differences in pace are mirrored in the couple's priorities. Meghan's focus, according to insiders, is on building her brand, expanding her influence, and leveraging her platform to shape public discourse. Harry, meanwhile, seeks grounding, emotional stability, and a sense of reconnection. Not just with Meghan, but with family and the broader royal network. These differences are not inherently incompatible, but they require negotiation, empathy, and compromise, which insiders suggest has been increasingly difficult amid public scrutiny and personal ambition. The tension is also compounded by lifestyle choices. Reports claim that Meghan spends extensive hours in media production, content strategy, and global engagements, often traveling for appearances or filming projects. Harry, while supportive, reportedly feels that these commitments reduce opportunities for meaningful interaction. Sources describe moments where Harry attempts to plan quiet evenings, casual dinners, or family outings, only to find them superseded by professional obligations or logistical demands. The resulting pattern, insiders say, creates a sense of emotional distance that is palpable, even in their shared public appearances. What makes this dynamic particularly challenging is the subtlety of its emergence. It is not the result of overt conflict, scandal, or dramatic disagreements. Rather, it is a slow, almost imperceptible divergence that accumulates over time. Observers note that the more Meghan immerses herself in her empire, the more Harry feels the absence of shared time and emotional connection. And while he reportedly expresses concern privately, there is a limit to how much he can act without causing tension, as any criticism could be misinterpreted as unsupportive or controlling. The delicate balance of love, respect, and autonomy becomes a tightrope walk. At the same time, insiders emphasize that this divergence has its own momentum. Once two lives begin to operate on slightly different trajectories, small differences amplify into larger patterns. Missed phone calls become signs of absence, postponed plans become emotional gaps, and even the smallest interruptions to shared routines can feel like distance. Friends suggest that Harry is acutely aware of these patterns, noticing them not only in daily life, but also in the subtle cues of Meghan's attention, tone, and energy. Compounding the situation is the intense public interest in their marriage. Every appearance, from charity galas to private family events, is scrutinized by millions. Media outlets analyze body language, fashion choices, and social interactions, often constructing narratives that oversimplify or exaggerate the realities of their relationship. This constant pressure, insiders claim, magnifies small issues, turning minor misalignments into major talking points. Harry reportedly struggles with this amplification, aware that private moments can quickly become public narratives, shaping perceptions and influencing the couple's public image. The emotional stakes are high, and sources suggest that this duality, two lives operating under one marriage, has begun to affect decision-making. Harry reportedly spends significant time reflecting on how to maintain connection without inhibiting Meghan's ambition, and how to protect their relationship without imposing constraints. These reflections, while thoughtful, also introduce stress, uncertainty, and an ongoing awareness of potential fractures in their partnership. Friends note that he often carries these considerations silently, aware that expressing them too loudly could escalate tension rather than resolve it. Yet, amidst these challenges, there are moments of hope. Insiders describe small victories: a planned outing that goes smoothly, a conversation that feels genuinely connective, a shared joke or gesture that recalls the early days of their romance. These instances, while fleeting, demonstrate that the bond remains intact and that both partners continue to care deeply for each other. But sources emphasize that such moments are increasingly rare, requiring intentional effort against the current of busy schedules, public scrutiny, and differing priorities. And just when it seemed that Harry and Meghan were merely managing a complex balancing act, insiders claim a subtle shift occurred. An event, conversation, or realization that highlighted the growing divide between their two lives. Friends describe it as a quiet but significant moment, the kind that often precedes major decisions. It was a reminder that, no matter the love, ambition, and differing life paths can create a gap that cannot be ignored. Because in the world of Harry and Meghan, love is not always enough to bridge two lives that are moving in parallel. And as insiders suggest, the consequences of this divergence would soon become unavoidable, leading to questions, confrontations, and decisions that would shock the public and reshape the story of their marriage forever. It started small, almost imperceptibly, a glance that lingered too long, a pause that felt heavier than necessary, a meeting canceled at the last minute. These are the moments that rarely make headlines, but, according to insiders, can be the first real indicators of cracks in even the most celebrated relationships. For Harry and Meghan, these early signs of tension were subtle, easily dismissed by casual observers, yet impossible to ignore for those closest to the couple. The hook is immediate. No one expected the first cracks to appear in a marriage that, publicly, seemed like a fairy tale. The world had watched their wedding with awe, followed their every public move, and cheered their efforts to modernize the monarchy. Yet, behind the polished appearances, insiders report that small but persistent signs of emotional strain began to emerge, quietly reshaping the narrative of their relationship. Sources suggest that the first signs of tension were rooted in conflicting priorities. Meghan's professional ambitions, once a shared interest that Harry supported wholeheartedly, began to consume more of her time and energy. Meetings, content creation, strategic planning, and public appearances became increasingly frequent, leaving Harry with fewer opportunities for shared moments. Friends reportedly noticed that he would often schedule downtime, hoping to reconnect, only to find plans postponed or adjusted to accommodate Meghan's work commitments. It's not dramatic in the sense of arguments or confrontations. It's the accumulation of minor incidents that create an emotional undercurrent. Insiders describe it as living in parallel timelines, Harry desiring closeness and personal connection, Meghan immersed in her career trajectory and global initiatives. The tension, while subtle at first, gradually became a pattern, creating a silent but palpable divide. Observers also point to body language as an early indicator. During public appearances, Meghan and Harry reportedly displayed smiles that seemed practiced, gestures that were polite rather than spontaneous, and moments where their attention appeared directed outward rather than toward each other. Photographers captured fleeting expressions, glances away, subtle shifts in posture, or brief hesitations in touch, that may have seemed insignificant but, according to insiders, signaled underlying strain. Friends claimed that private moments echoed these public cues. Conversations, once fluid and intimate, reportedly began to revolve around logistics, scheduling, or strategy. The personal, emotional interactions that had once strengthened their bond became less frequent, replaced by practical discussions about calendars, travel plans, or commitments. Sources suggest that Harry began to feel a quiet frustration, not with Meghan herself, but with the cumulative impact of these patterns on their emotional connection. The first real tension, insiders claim, manifested during a family event. While specifics are scarce, sources say that what began as a routine gathering became a revealing snapshot of their growing divide. Meghan reportedly engaged deeply with her professional contacts, discussing content strategies and public appearances, while Harry sought moments of connection with family and friends. The juxtaposition was stark, one partner fully absorbed in career ambitions, the other craving relational intimacy. Observers suggest that the event marked a subtle turning point, the first moment when friends and advisors recognized that the couple's trajectories were diverging. It's important to note that these tensions were not about a lack of love. Friends emphasized that both Harry and Meghan remained deeply committed to each other. The issue, insiders report, was alignment. Their goals, schedules, and emotional rhythms were increasingly out of sync, creating a pattern where affection existed alongside distance, admiration alongside frustration. This duality, while manageable in theory, became emotionally taxing in practice. The media, of course, was quick to amplify even the smallest indicators. Speculative articles, social media chatter, and analysis of public appearances created a feedback loop, reinforcing perceptions of tension even when the reality was more nuanced. Harry reportedly felt this amplification acutely, aware that every minor misalignment could be misinterpreted and magnified into a narrative of discord. The constant scrutiny, sources suggest, intensified the emotional strain, making the early signs of tension harder to navigate. Another source points to travel as a pressure point. Meghan's work often required international trips, appearances at high-profile events, or extended periods of production, leaving Harry to manage family obligations and personal commitments alone. While both partners reportedly acknowledged the necessity of these endeavors, insiders claim that the repeated absence created a sense of emotional distance. Small moments of disconnection began to accumulate into a broader pattern that, according to friends, could not be ignored. Insiders also report subtle shifts in communication patterns. Texts, calls, and messages, once frequent and personal, reportedly became more functional and brief. Conversations that might have included shared reflections or emotional support increasingly centered on planning, logistics, or updates about schedules. Harry, sources claim, noticed this shift and reportedly expressed concern privately, seeking ways to bridge the growing gap without infringing on Meghan's professional priorities. The tension was compounded by public expectations. The world had invested in their marriage narrative, celebrating every milestone and projecting ideals of unity and harmony. Friends suggest that both Harry and Meghan were acutely aware of these expectations, adding pressure to maintain appearances even as the private reality grew more complex. This discrepancy between public perception and private experience, insiders claim, contributed to the emotional intensity of the early tension, making it more difficult to address openly. Interestingly, sources say that Meghan's awareness of these signs was mixed. She reportedly recognized the stress but framed it as a natural consequence of their unique lifestyle, believing that the demands of global influence and public engagement were temporary pressures that would eventually normalize. Harry, however, reportedly experienced the cumulative impact more acutely, sensing that the repeated absence of shared time was beginning to erode the closeness of their relationship. Friends describe a moment when Harry confronted the tension internally. During a quiet evening away from public scrutiny, he reportedly reflected on the patterns he had observed, the divergence in schedules, the subtle shift in interactions, the accumulation of small distances that created emotional gaps. It was, insiders claim, a moment of clarity, one in which he began to understand that admiration and love alone might not be sufficient to sustain a marriage under these conditions. And just when the early tension seemed manageable, sources suggest that an unexpected incident intensified it. A missed commitment, a delayed message, or a perceived slight. Details remain unclear, reportedly acted as a catalyst, bringing the underlying stress to the forefront. Friends say that Harry and Meghan were forced to confront, even if indirectly, the reality that their lives were increasingly moving in parallel, and that alignment would require intentional effort, compromise, and perhaps difficult conversations. The early signs of tension, according to insiders, also had a ripple effect on their immediate circle. Friends, advisors, and family members began to notice patterns, speculate on causes, and wonder whether the divergence was temporary or indicative of deeper challenges. While Harry reportedly sought counsel and support, Meghan continued to focus on professional pursuits, creating a dynamic in which both love and distance coexisted. A complex emotional landscape that insiders claim would shape the trajectory of their relationship for months to come. And just when it seemed that the tension might stabilize, insiders hint that a more consequential development was on the horizon. A decision, a conversation, or a moment of realization would soon force Harry and Meghan to address the growing divide between their two lives, a divide that, if left unresolved, could reshape their marriage and alter public perception in ways no one could have anticipated. Because the truth is, early tension is rarely benign. It is a warning signal, a prelude to decisions, and often the first step toward outcomes that the world eventually sees. And for Harry and Meghan, insiders suggest, the first signs of tension were just the beginning of a story that would shock audiences, challenge assumptions, and change the narrative of their marriage forever. Have you ever wondered what happens when two people in love begin to live in completely different professional worlds? When one partner's career accelerates at a breakneck speed, while the other tries to find balance between personal priorities and public expectation. For Harry and Meghan, insiders suggest, this career divide became one of the most significant forces shaping their relationship, and it may have been the first factor that truly threatened their closeness. The hook is immediate. The divide isn't about ambition or love. It's about timing, focus, and priorities. Meghan's career, according to sources, exploded in the years following their transition away from full-time royal duties. Her Netflix series, lifestyle content, public speaking, brand partnerships, and website initiatives have drawn global attention, acclaim, and controversy in equal measure. Harry, by contrast, focused on personal reconciliation, charitable work, and stepping into a more subdued public role, often attempting to find balance while also supporting Meghan. Insiders describe a situation where both were moving forward, but on entirely different tracks. The early signs of the career divide were subtle. Meghan's projects, initially collaborative or overlapping with Harry's initiatives, began demanding more of her time, energy, and emotional bandwidth. Meetings that once included Harry became solo sessions for Meghan. Travel schedules increasingly removed her from family life. Private dinners and casual interactions were interrupted by calls, planning sessions, or content deadlines. While these changes were not dramatic on the surface, insiders report that the accumulation created emotional friction, a friction that was nearly invisible to the public eye but profoundly felt behind closed doors. Imagine trying to maintain a partnership when your schedules barely overlap. Harry reportedly found himself in moments where he wanted to share a quiet conversation or plan family time, only to realize that Meghan was either on a flight, in a production meeting, or focused on content that required her undivided attention. It's a situation insiders liken to two parallel universes, existing side by side, occasionally intersecting, but rarely aligned in meaningful ways. Friends and advisors note that the career divide also created differences in lifestyle and energy levels. Meghan, energized by public appearances, strategic planning, and professional milestones, reportedly approached life with intensity, precision, and focus. Harry, in contrast, according to sources, desired quieter moments, emotional connection, and time to process his personal and familial responsibilities. The contrast was subtle, yet insidious, generating an unspoken tension that both partners reportedly felt but rarely articulated in full. One source revealed a telling anecdote. During a period when Meghan was immersed in a major project, Harry allegedly attempted to plan a low-key family event. While he hoped for mutual enthusiasm, Meghan's focus remained on work, leaving Harry feeling disappointed and emotionally distanced. The incident, while minor in isolation, reportedly became emblematic of the growing divide, symbolizing the tension between professional ambition and relational closeness. The media, naturally, magnified the situation. Headlines celebrated Meghan's accomplishments while speculating on Harry's role or perceived absence in her career. Social media buzzed with praise, analysis, and critique, often drawing exaggerated conclusions about the couple's dynamic. Sources claim that this scrutiny intensified the emotional impact of the divide, making Harry more conscious of the tension and Meghan more focused on maintaining momentum. The career divide, insiders suggest, was not just private. It was now a public narrative, shaping perceptions of their marriage for millions of observers worldwide. Compounding the situation was the perceived difference in priorities. Meghan, sources suggest, viewed her career as a platform for influence, empowerment, and global engagement. Every project, partnership, and appearance was a strategic move to cement her position as a thought leader, media figure, and role model. Harry, meanwhile, reportedly prioritized family connection, emotional closeness, and efforts to reconcile with the royal institution. Both paths were valid and meaningful. But the divergence created tension because it was increasingly difficult to find points of alignment without compromise. Insiders report that this career divide affected even the simplest daily interactions. Phone calls became hurried check-ins. Meals were eaten on the go. Conversations often focused on logistics rather than emotions. Harry, sources say, struggled with the slow erosion of shared experiences, while Meghan, immersed in the intensity of her professional world, reportedly saw the adjustments as necessary trade-offs for long-term goals. The resulting dynamic, insiders claim, was a delicate balance between love and distance, a balance that was increasingly difficult to maintain. Friends note that the divide also led to moments of subtle frustration. Harry, accustomed to more shared experiences, reportedly felt isolated, while Meghan, focused on career growth, occasionally perceived his concerns as lack of understanding or support. It's a paradox. Each partner's actions were rooted in care, commitment, and intention, yet the outcomes inadvertently created tension. This, insiders emphasize, is often the hidden challenge in high-profile marriages where ambition and public expectation collide. Interestingly, sources suggest that Harry and Meghan made efforts to bridge the gap. Plans were made for shared projects, collaborative appearances, and mutual support during key events. Yet the demands of Meghan's career reportedly outweighed these interventions, leaving the divide intact despite good intentions. Friends describe it as a pattern of continuous effort with inconsistent results, a scenario that breeds both admiration for dedication and subtle emotional fatigue. The career divide, insiders claim, also intensified as Meghan began to expand her global visibility. Speaking engagements, partnerships with high-profile brands, and content creation for her digital platforms reportedly consumed an ever-increasing portion of her time. Harry, while supportive, reportedly found it difficult to compete with the pace and scale of her professional life, leading to moments where he felt secondary, not in love, but in attention and shared priorities. The emotional impact, insiders note, was profound. Admiration remained, but closeness diminished, and the sense of alignment that once defined their marriage weakened. Another factor reportedly exacerbated the tension, the difference in how each partner perceived public scrutiny. Meghan reportedly thrived under the intense spotlight, using it as a tool for influence, branding, and empowerment. Harry, however, had spent years navigating press intrusion, privacy concerns, and public expectation, making him acutely aware of the personal cost of media attention. This difference in perspective, insiders claim, contributed to subtle misalignments in priorities, further amplifying the career divide. The career divide, sources emphasize, was more than professional. It was deeply personal. It affected routines, emotional connection, and the perception of partnership. Friends say that Harry often reflected on how to maintain intimacy and relational closeness without inhibiting Meghan's ambitions, while Meghan focused on maximizing impact, visibility, and professional influence. The two paths, admirable individually.